Hey guys, my name is Taco, and in this video, I'm going to try and predict how the 2024 Melee rankings are going to look like. For some context, the current date as of when I'm writing the script is the 17th of March 2024, and the last major tournament was Genesis. This is quite important to keep in mind because I obviously won't be able to consider any data gathered after this date and time. With all that in mind, it's time to get into my thoughts on the future rankings. 2023 saw the unexpected rise of a very back and forth and explosive rivalry, the likes of which is rarely ever seen within Melee's community. Rivalry I'm referring to, of course, being Zain versus Cody Schwab. In case you're not caught up, here's a quick summary of how it all went about. In the beginning portion of 2023, Cody won two majors in a row that came in the form of major upsets and Battle of BC, thereby making him tied with Jmook for having won the most amount of 2023 majors. These winning streaks were not to last, however, because Zain, who had gotten ranked number 1 in 2022, would give both players a run for their money by taking dominant first place victories at Tipped Off, Fate, and Gommel. His first place major streak only had a brief interruption that came in the form of Leffen, who was barely able to edge out Zain in grand finals at LACS 5. And so, when it came time for the annual summer rankings, Zain would end up getting ranked number 1 again. This wasn't all that surprising to anyone, considering he'd won the most amount of majors up to that point. Shortly after the summer rankings had been released, Zain would go on to win another major, this time in the form of Super SmashCon, at which point pretty much everyone agreed that Zain would end the year as the number 1 ranked player once again. But then, seemingly out of nowhere, Cody would defeat Zain in a Game 5 situation during the Grand Finals of Shine 2023. A few months later, Cody would follow up his success by winning Big House with what is perhaps the greatest losers run of all time. This made it so Zain and Cody had won 4 majors each, so in a way they were both number 1 in the world at the same time. And since there weren't any other majors set to occur throughout the rest of the year, the community had to try and find something that would act as a tiebreaker. With a little help from Ludwig, the Melee community would eventually receive the tiebreaker that they were hoping for in the shape of an event called The Match. A best of 10 between Zain and Cody where the winning player would be declared number 1 in the world. Well, at the match, Cody would defeat Zain 10-6. And therefore, Cody became the current ranked number 1 player in the world. Now with all that out of the way, I can finally start talking about what I think 2024 is going to bring to the table. For starters, I think that Zain and Cody are going to continue dominating the scene, and that one of them will end up number 1, and the other will not fall far behind them. Whilst I could see the number 1 spot going to either one of them, I think there's a bigger chance that it'll go to Cody. Here's why. Over the last few months, Cody has seen a dominance unlike anything Melee has ever seen, because he's not only gone 7 months without placing anything other than first at all the events he attended, but he has also lost no more than one single game throughout those 7 months. The one and only loss I was talking about being his loss against Morse Code, who was barely able to upset Cody at the Big House without it mattering much in the long run, like I mentioned previously. Nothing lasts forever, so there will come a time when Cody loses a tournament, and there's a high mathematical chance that'll happen sometime this year. But as of right now, there really isn't much of a real reason to bet on Cody ever placing anything other than first. Zain's number 1 scenario, on the other hand, is a lot harder to feasibly predict, because ever since he's won SmashCon, Zayn has only managed to place 2nd at Shine and 4th at Big House. Those finishes are obviously not enough to make you the #1 ranked player in the world. That being said, Zayn is still obviously an amazing player that seems to be able to outdo everyone, and he also seems to have an easier time fighting Cody than any other top 10 player, and so I could definitely see a scenario in which Zayn will be able to win enough majors to reach top 2, and if he gets his shit together, he could definitely reach top 1. All in all, I think there's a larger chance that Melee's top 2 ranking spots will go to these two in this order rather than anything else happening. From here on out, the rankings will be a lot harder to predict, but here's what I believe is most likely to happen. The person I believe is most likely of getting placed 3rd is Moky. This might seem like an odd choice at first, but hear me out. Moky is a good contender when it comes to the question of which player improved the most in 2023, as the year saw him go from being in contention of top 10 to being ranked as the 4th best player in the world for good reason. This is because he was able to play somewhere between 4th and 6th at all the very many majors that he attended. That being said though, there are some obstacles that Moky just hasn't been able to overcome despite his best efforts. I'm mainly talking about the fact that he still has yet to take a set off Zayn, Mango, and Jmook. Those 3 players essentially serve as Moky's kryptonite, and as a result, Moky has not only never won a major, but he's never even made it to Grand Finals. With all that in mind, some of you might be wondering why I even put them this high. The thing is that Moky might just be more motivated for greatness than any other player. On top of that, I can imagine some less than impossible scenarios that will allow Moky to beat his 3 demons. Let me explain. It's no secret that Mango hasn't quite been able to replicate the massive success he once had as of late. Probably because of a combination of lack of motivation and falling behind the meta. I think this is going to keep happening with him, and I'll get into why later on. But with the cracks in his plot armor starting to show, I could definitely see things like Moky beating him become a gradually more common occurrence. Zayn, whilst likely to stay a top 3 player, doesn't hold quite the same level of dominance he did a few years back, and over the past few months he's struggled beating Fox mains like Cody, and so I could definitely see Moky taking a few sets from him every now and then become a somewhat common thing in the not too distant future. Zayn will probably maintain the superior record though. As for Jmook, there really isn't a case that's as strong as it is with the other 2, but Fox has a winning matchup against Sheik. It's by no means the strongest argument, but it is something to consider. It really is not that common for a Sheik player to hold such a consistent record against a Fox player, and it is a bit strange to think about the fact that Jmook has been able to beat him for as long as he has. So who knows, maybe it won't last. Moving on, we have 2 players that have had relatively similar fates as of late. I think one of these 2 are going to get ranked 4th, and the other is going to get ranked 5th. The players I am thinking of are Jmook and Amsa. During the end of 2022, Amsa went from being an okay top 10 player to seeing an unexpected rise to dominance, where he was able to win almost every major that he attended. This lasted until about Genesis 9, where he failed to reach top 8. This would be the first in a long series of disappointing finishes from Amsa that would last throughout all of 2023. Amsa's curse was seemingly broken just recently, however, when he finished 2nd at Genesis after barely suffering the slightest loss against Cody Schwab in Grand Finals. It should also be mentioned that Amsa has been experimenting with picking up a secondary. In 2022, he went on record saying that he was considering picking up Falco as a secondary to use against Yoshi's problematic matchups like Fox, Sheik, and Falcon. Now that he's proved that he can win Super Majors with solo Yoshi, this has never been closer to becoming a reality. While it was at Gommel, AMSA would actually end up using Falco in Game 3 against Hungrybox. And although Hungrybox did end up winning that game, AMSA did do well enough to prove that his Falco ain't the worst thing in the world. In addition to that, he has also toyed around with the idea of using Marth, mostly via stream. This makes it so that it's quite possible that AMSA is going to try using Marth in a similar manner to how he used Falco in the coming year. Overall, I think it's quite likely that AMSA is going to start using a secondary in the near future, and it'll probably be either Falco or Marth. Jmook would be the one that ended up winning Genesis 9, thus beginning his brief run as the technical number 1 that would end in the exact same fashion as AMSA's. A few months after winning Genesis, Jmook won his second major in a row in the form of Collision. This made it so everyone for a very brief moment was sure that he would end up getting ranked number 1. This did not end up happening though, because Jmook would then end up struggling to reach top 5 and sometimes even top 8 for the rest of the year. That being said, Jmook is not a player that should be slept on by any means. He is the current 3rd best player in the world after all, and despite his inconsistency, he does seem more competent at beating Sane and Cody compared to quite a lot of other players. Therefore, I think he's still able to be a top 5 player. So here's how I believe that Melee's top 5 cast is going to end up looking like by the end of 2024. I could see AMSA and Jmook swapping placements, but I'm mostly positive about the rest. Keyword being mostly. You see, there is one person that I do believe has the ability to make top 5, it's just that said person might not compete enough to make that happen. Let me explain. Leffen is a very iconic smasher that was consistently ranked somewhere around top 5 for a very long time, and I'm sure he needs no further introduction. 2023 did unfortunately not end up being his best year, however, as he ended up attending a total of 3 events and ended up as nothing more than an honorable mention on the 2023 rankings. In today's reality, every last one of Melee's older top players are struggling to reach their former glory for one reason or another. Leffen is sort of the odd one out here, because unlike the others, Leffen is not held back by his results whatsoever. His winner-side-eyed first place at the LICS is more than enough proof of this. The problem that's holding Leffen back is the fact that he doesn't really have enough time or resources to compete all that often, and he usually prefers to compete in other games such as Guilty Gear Strive. And if his recent tweets are anything to go by, Leffen won't change his ways anytime soon. So all in all, there's little doubt in my mind that Leffen still has what it takes to be a top 5 player, but it's just that I can't imagine a scenario where he ends up competing enough to be ranked as such. Now we're on to rank number 6. From here on out, it becomes even harder to correctly rank players. I should mention that. But I do think there's one guy that has a significantly bigger chance of placing 6th than any other player does. That player is Plop. One aspect of Melee that seems to stay true no matter what is the fact that over time someone will rise to dominance only to fall sometimes even more dramatically than they rose. But then there is the odd case of Plop. I say odd because weirdly enough, the dude has somehow been able to withhold his position as a possible top 5 player for a very long time, and oddly enough, he doesn't even come across as ever having wanted to be much more than achieve much more than that. And in 2023, Plop was able to place first at CEO and Riptide. He also finished second place at Major Upset and Big House. But the thing is that Plop barely participated in anything else throughout the whole year. And so it's quite difficult to predict exact data with this guy. Surprisingly enough, Plop decided not to compete at Genesis, and as far as I'm aware, he never even stated why. If that wasn't enough, he still has yet to register for any upcoming events. This makes me less sure that he'll even end up getting ranked in the first place. But as it stands currently, I'm quite comfortable in ranking him 6th, as he has little trouble in keeping up with those I placed above him, and I think he's more likely to eventually enter a tournament rather than not. Now we're on to spot number 7. I strongly believe that this spot will go to one of 3 people. Some of you may or may not be able to guess which 3 I'm referring to. I do, however, think that Hungrybox has a significantly better chance of placing 7th than the other 2 do. In case you can't tell who the other 2 are, then don't worry, I've ranked them 8th and 9th respectively, and I'll get to them in time, but for now I'll just focus on HBox. The story of Hungrybox has been told so many times that it's starting to feel as though it's well known even to those who have never played Smash. Therefore, I won't waste time talking about how he went from being underestimated during the Five Gods era to being the undisputed #1 player for a really long time, to having a fucking crab thrown at him at Pound and yada yada yada. We all know the story. But what really matters is that in the present moment, HBox has become somewhat of a shell of his former self. He failed to win a major in 2023, and he has consistently failed to beat certain other top players such as Zain and Cody. The statement of him not taking it as seriously and therefore isn't able to compete as well probably has some truth to it, but let's be real, it's only one part of a bigger problem. Another issue that's probably bigger in my opinion is the fact that HBox has been putting a lot more focus into other projects such as playing Ultimates and being a YouTuber. It goes without saying that being a godlike Melee player is easier said than done when you combine it with those things. Considering how long it's been since we've seen a true HGOD run, it's been speculated that Juan might try focusing less on his other projects just for a minute so he could spend more time practicing Melee and possibly win himself a major. I myself am not opposed to the idea of HBox achieving what I just described sometime this year, but at the moment this scenario is quite unrealistic. Juan still has yet to show much interest in doing something like this, and he's generally just more likely to keep reaching top 8 before playing less than satisfactory throughout the rest of the tournament. Now we're on to the number 8 spot. I think there is one man that's more likely to end up on this spot compared to anyone else, and that man is Wizrobe. Someone is probably going to get mad at me for not giving the spot to a certain someone else, but let me explain why I think this is the case. As we all know, Wizrobe has just sort of been lurking in the shadows, attending only the smallest number of events throughout the last couple of years. 2023 started off no different for him, and it was looking as though it would end up as nothing more than the next in a very long list of mediocre years for the guy. But just as everyone thought they had made up their mind on Wissy, the guy suddenly shows up to Riptide with an unexpectedly phenomenal performance. At the event, Wissy defeated several top talented players like Moki, Amsa, and Lod to make it to Grand Finals, where he lost to Plop. It's also worth mentioning that he had also placed second at the significantly smaller CEO earlier in the year. At CEO, Wissy beat top talents Jmook and Hungrybox to make it to Grand Finals, where he'd once again lose to Plop. And so, despite the fact that he took most of the year off, Wizrobe would end the year by getting ranked 9th, thanks mostly to his excellent performances at CEO and Riptide. And the thing is that it seems as though Wizrobe would rather try continuing his success as opposed to retreating back to the shadows. A little less than a month from when I'm writing this, Wizrobe placed 8th at Genesis, be it after a comparatively less impressive run. Furthermore, it seems as though Wizrobe wants to start competing at majors more often than he is currently, or that's at least what one may guess based off of what little data we have on most upcoming 2024 majors that currently have been announced. And so, if we assume that Wizrobe will continue his current success, which I wholeheartedly believe he's going to, I think he has a significantly bigger chance of getting ranked 8th than any other player does. Some of you may or may not have already figured out who I'm putting in 9th. This player is often labeled the Kid, the GOAT, the Buster, and of course, Mango. Mango is often cited as being the single greatest player of all time, due mostly to the fact that he's been able to consistently gain top placings at majors, stretching all the way from 2008 to the present day. During the last year or so, however, things haven't been going quite as well for him. Mango ended 2022 on a high note, with him getting ranked as the 3rd best player in the world. Shortly after that, however, he proceeded to make a complete fool out of himself by going Dr. Mario at Genesis 9 and finishing 97th place. And whilst he thankfully hasn't stooped as low as 97th after that, most of his runs in the time that has passed have all fallen into one of two categories. Runs where he seemingly put at least some sort of effort into winning, only to fall short of first place at the last moment, and runs where, like Genesis 9, he seemingly just gave up somewhere along the way and made a big fool out of himself yet again. It was quite obvious, however, that the reason he played so mediocre had more to do with him throwing some sort of protest rather than him being washed. So, at the start of 2024, a lot of Mango fans, including myself, thought that Mango would start making some sort of comeback. I've been trying to put out this video for quite a long time now, and I was originally considering putting him somewhere around the top 5 range. But as we're about to see, I now sadly doubt that this will end up being the case. At Genesis X, he ended up placing a mediocre 9th after losing to Jmook and Hungrybox. Personally, I didn't see this as too much of an issue though, as Jmook and Hungrybox are both players that Mango has always struggled against. And I'm sure some of you thought the same thing. Mango's biggest kicker in the balls, however, would come in the form of Full Bloom, a semi-major held a short while after Genesis. While he was at Full Bloom, Mango would lose to Ossify, a player that usually struggles breaking into top 16, and Sir Maris, a player that barely broke into the top 80 on the top 100 rankings, Inks, and many people just hadn't even heard of the guy before this event. Some might shrug that whole event off by saying Mango decided not to play seriously again. But to me, it looked as though Mango genuinely put all his heart and soul into these battles. And unfortunately, I think this is a sign that Mango won't be doing so well going forward. And whilst I can't imagine a realistic scenario where Mango doesn't end up getting ranked within the top 10, I sadly don't think we'll see Mango reclaiming his former glory in the foreseeable future. And now, finally, we've reached the 10th and final spot. This particular spot has been quite a lot harder to rank, at least in my opinion. However, there is one player that I believe to have a significantly better chance of ending up ending up here. That player is Armada. Just kidding, Armada has not entered serious competition for over 5 years, and he seems to have little to no interest in returning. He's obviously not getting ranked. No, the person I actually believe is getting ranked 10th is Aklo. Let me explain. At the very end of 2022, Aklo, who was a fairly new and unknown player at the time, would win a minor tournament named Redemption Rumble using his Pocket Link. After this performance, Aklo would slowly begin to put his name out there. In 2023, Aklo would see huge improvement to his gameplay as the year saw him consistently place within top 8, and he was also able to beat top talents such as Amsa, Jmook, and Moki. His best performance by far being the one he had at Shine, where the aspiring Fox main would place 3rd after being 3-0'd by Zain in losers finals. Aklo would proceed to end the year on a high note by getting ranked 10th on the global rankings. I personally believe that Aklo is likely to keep this rank rather than losing it to someone else. Aklo's two biggest competitors for the spot come in the form of Kadoran and Lod. And at the moment, it seems as though Aklo is taking Melee far more seriously than the other two. And therefore, I think it's a lot harder to imagine that one of these two are going to end up on top instead of Aklo. Let's review what these three are currently up to. Kadoran recently announced on Twitter that he has become a free agent and that he wants to transition into being a TO. John additionally added that whilst he has no intent on quitting Melee, he won't have the means to compete as much as he has in the years prior. On the other hand, we have Lod, who graduated medical school a while back and has been working as a full-time doctor ever since. And whilst this is definitely great for Lod in the grand scheme of things, it has come with the consequence of him not being able to compete as much. 2023 ended in a somewhat disappointing way for him, as while he did prove that he's still a top-level threat, the focus he puts into his career has unfortunately made it as though he couldn't compete as much, and he would therefore end up getting ranked significantly lower than one would hope. But then there's Aklo, who seems to be doing the polar opposite. I say this because of the fact that because within the last 1.5 years, Aklo has moved up the rankings by 6 places, competed in all but a select few majors as well as far too many locals to count, and to top it all off, the guy even managed to secure the what I'm getting to here is the fact that the current number one ranked player is currently his teammate. Yeah, the script's weird. Yeah. And that's just a few of Aklo's many recent achievements within Melee. With all this in mind, I don't think it should come off as a surprise that I'm placing Aklo at the number 10 spot. Even with all that said, there are a few top 20 and top 30 players that I believe have larger potential than what their current results show. And that these players therefore have some semblance of chance at breaking into the top 10. The reason why I'm not spending too much time talking about them has to do with the fact that I'd be mostly basing my opinion off of theoretical chances rather than foolproof evidence. And because of that, it's no secret to anyone that their chance of getting ranked top 10 is quite a lot lower. So that pretty much wraps up my prediction for the 2024 rankings. I highly doubt that every last one of these players will end up placing in the exact spot that I put him in, but I do think that everyone here has a significantly higher chance of ending up where I put them rather than not. But of course, one of the few aspects of Melee that is fully predictable is the fact that the game is never fully predictable. And who knows? Maybe we'll see Zain go back to his old ways by overpowering Cody and going back to being ranked number 1. Or maybe the year will see Mango return to his old position as a definite top 3 player. Or maybe, just maybe, the year is going to see Morse Code do the impossible by defeating every player at every major and become the undisputed number 1. Maybe he'll also become God Emperor of the universe while he's at it. Neither of these 3 predictions, nor any other for that matter, are fully impossible to disprove. But anyway, that pretty much wraps up everything that I had to say. If you disagree with my opinion, then I think it will be quite cool if you were to comment why that is, and what exactly it is that you'd personally change. I love a good discussion, and I think it would add a lot to this whole thing. I know this video is quite a lot different compared to all my previous videos, and I'll let you know that you can expect to see more videos similar to this one in the near future. If you want to, you could also check out my Twitter account that I have linked on my channel page, as well as Smash Trondheim's Twitch and YouTube channels. The latter two are both owned and operated by my local Smash scene. No pressure though. Anyways, I'll see you all around. Goodbye.